So we got an insane number of new polls out yesterday, so we wanted to help you put them all in context and kind of put all the data together to see what we can make of it. Let's just go ahead and throw up all of the national new polls that were out. This was just yesterday, okay? So you see Quinnipiac, Biden's up in every single one. +10 for Quinnipiac, +7 for Suffolk, +7 for Reuters Ipsos, +8 for Grinnell Seltzer, +11 for Economist YouGov. And Saagar, you know, it seemed like Trump had gotten a little bit of bump out of the RNC, and now it seems like things are basically back to where they were.
Things are essentially back to where they were. So just to give everybody an idea, our Real Clear Politics polling average currently is Biden +7.2. That's a couple of points higher than where Hillary Clinton was at this point in the 2016 election. And the more important thing is actually the state-by-state polls, which we also got several of those within there. So let's start, I think, with the Fox News poll that came out from the Battleground states. Now, you can see there that these are all critical states for Trump: Arizona, Wisconsin, and North Carolina. Now, +8 in Wisconsin, +9 in Arizona, and +4 for Biden in North Carolina. Wisconsin is the one that is the most important there. First of all, remember, this is a likely voter poll, so you don't need to factor in the +2 general Republican advantage for likely voters. And as I understand it, the sampling on it was quite good, as in it had a D+3 bias in terms of its sampling. So, you know, you can maybe look at that overall, but it's a little bit easier for us to adjust. But the +9, +8 that we see out of the state of Wisconsin makes it not good for Trump. And I'm looking really at the 538 kind of average that we have here. And overall, there has not been a poll that's been good for Trump since 3 weeks ago. And that was actually not a particularly high quality poll. Every other poll has Biden up by the least of 5, and at some places at 13 points.
This is in Wisconsin?
This is in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, so. And look, there was a lot of conjecture about what might happen in Wisconsin with the unrest in Kenosha. The president went and visited. Joe Biden will be there today. Maybe things still shift. That is absolutely a possibility, especially, and I think this is a really interesting analysis from Dave Wasserman, to the extent that Trump has seen a little bit of a maybe like 1 point improvement, it's because there's been a slight movement back. He calls it a modest homecoming of non-college educated white voters to Trump. Biden has really made all of his gains with suburbanites and also with older voters, with seniors. And as long as he holds on to those gains, he's going to be in good shape. Now, the other interesting piece here, though, which has got to be a red flag for Democrats, even if they don't need them necessarily for this election, but they should be extremely nervous about the fact that, you know, here we are we've had 4 years of Democrats saying this is the most racist president we've ever had. Trump giving them some fodder to work with in that regard, and yet African Americans have moved a little bit towards Trump over the course of his presidency, and Hispanics have moved even more so towards Trump over the course of his presidency. So, look, what happened in 2016? It's not that you had these groups overwhelmingly backing Trump, but you had a little bit of depressed turnout. You had a little bit of a shift, especially among Latino voters, and that was enough to get it done. Let me just throw into the mix here some news that just came across the radar this morning, which is that Rick Snyder, the Republican governor, former governor of Michigan, who poisoned Flint, Michigan, just endorsed Joe Biden. If you want to lose Michigan, tout that endorsement. Go ahead and do it and see what it does to your African-American turnout in places like Flint and across the state. If they have any political sense whatsoever, they will immediately distance themselves from this endorsement. I mean, his culpability in this, in my view, is criminal. Jordan Sheridan's done some great investigative work on this. We've had him on the show. In any case, all of that being said, what the polls show at this point, a few days out of the RNC with the dust having settled, is basically we're back where we were, which, given that opinions on Donald Trump are pretty hard and fast, it's hard to move things around that much.
See, I don't think the Democrats should care, because you know what? For every black voter that they're going to lose in Flint, they're going to pick one up in the suburbs. That's their whole strategy. They do not care about black voters or Latino voters in this election. Their entire gain, despite the fact that black voters are the ones who delivered Joe Biden the primary nomination, his tax strategy, his campaign is all geared towards upper middle class white suburbanites and boomers. And That's enough to win. But in the long run, they are leaving all of these hundreds of millions of voters on the table for Republicans. But it's not like the Republicans want to take them. They're not doing anything in order to make sure they can offer. It's remarkable that despite the fact that they haven't really done all that much, that many of them are still backing Trump. And especially with Latino voters, 7-point bump there that we see. But overall, I think that the polls basically go back to where we were kind of before the DNC, the RNC. There has been no bump relatively, like either way. And that's not a good situation for Trump. I think you said this. This is supposed to be the high water mark of his candidacy. It basically was back in 2016.
Yeah.
But given the craziness of all of the situation, I just don't see it happening. And we're going to find out this morning what the unemployment claims are. But basically, here's the situation. There are millions of Americans who are on unemployment, almost 1 in 8 basically American workers who are receiving aid. And yet we see nobody speaking to their concerns. We don't see anybody at the Trump campaign, anybody at the Biden campaign. Nobody seems to be at least trying to speak to them and for them whatsoever. It's the greatest political opportunity, which is just being completely left on the table.
It is truly insane to watch the disconnect between these two campaigns and the very easy, simple things that they could be saying about healthcare, about the economy to address people's needs. But here we are, and so bottom line, looking at all these polls after the DNC and the RNC and the riots in Kenosha and the shooting in Portland and all that has happened over the past couple of weeks, we're basically back to where we were.
There we go.
All right, more Rising for you after this.